This holiday season, give your loved ones something they'll enjoy for years to come. An Aura frame. It's a gorgeous digital photo frame that you can preload with photos. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code CityCast at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code CityCast. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. And support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. CityCast Seattle is made possible by AT&T. America's first network is also its fastest and most reliable. Based on RootMetrics' United States Root Score Report, 1H 2025. Tested with best commercially available smartphones on 3 national mobile networks across all available network types. Your experiences may vary. RootMetrics rankings are not an endorsement of AT&T. When you compare, there's no comparison. AT&T. This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Today on CityCast Seattle, the 2026 midterms are right around the corner, new police contracts just passed, and we're going to talk about the future of Seattle's creative economy. But first, Seattle has been in the news recently for some drama around a World Cup Pride match that's scheduled for June of next year. We'll get into that in just a second, but I first want to kick today off by asking, Chase Hutchinson, critic and journalist at the Seattle Times and a contributor to KOW, if you had your pick, which sport would you want to host here instead?
I feel like hockey is in the air. We got a new PWHL team that had their first big win. Let's get more hockey in town. We got the infrastructure for it. I think that's where I'd go. Let's go Torrent. All right. What about you? Guy Oron, a staff reporter for Real Change and Seattle-based journalist and writer of the newsletter Gossip Guy. Which sport would you want to host here instead?
I'm very biased, but I'd love to see like a climbing world championship here.
Ooh, are you a climber?
Yeah.
What kind of climbing do you do?
Mostly bouldering.
Nice. One of our producers was joking earlier that speed climbing should be the sport. I mean, the more obscure, the better.
It's kind of incredible how quickly they get up that wall.
All right. Well, bouldering and hockey, actually 2 of my favorite sports. I am completely in favor of that. But coming back to soccer, this week, national and even international news has been abuzz about this upcoming World Cup game. So in June, if you all haven't already heard, we're hosting the World Cup, and FIFA is organizing a pride match between Egypt and Iran. So both countries have complained to FIFA. Homosexuality is illegal in Iran and even punishable by death. And in Egypt, being gay isn't explicitly illegal, but the country's morality laws have been used to target gay people, and there are very few protections for gay people there. Seattle organizers have said that the game will go on, but people are wondering if the game should maybe be moved to our neighbors in the north in Vancouver, which is also hosting some of the games. So I want to know from you two, it seems like if both of the countries don't like this, should the game just get moved? How are you all feeling about this coinciding with Pride also?
I think if there's one thing I take away from this is that the Pride Party will go on no matter what. It sounds like outside of the soccer arena, and respectfully to soccer, disrespectfully to FIFA, may be more exciting than the game that could very well end 0-0. I love soccer, but that happens more than you would think. It sounds like from the local statements of people, they're committed to continuing on in a way that is not sort of bowing down to what I think would be a pretty concerning, like, encroachment upon a celebration of queer identity in the city. If FIFA decides to move it, that's their loss in many ways. I think that there's a devoted soccer audience, many of whom are a member of the LGBTQ community. So I'm saying no. I think the BBC story said that it doesn't seem like that's really going to happen, or that there's a big enough push against it. So I'm team no. I think you navigate this together and try and say, hey, maybe come out after the game and see what it is that's going on, and have it be that is the best possible outcome.
Guy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love Pride. I love soccer. I hate FIFA. They're a terrible organization. So anything they do seems very fishy, and it does seem a little provocative for them to schedule the Pride match for two more conservative countries, maybe that don't share like the same as Western values. I think in general, this is a bit of a distraction. You know, it's like a populist thing to say, oh, we're against the West because we don't support LGBTQ rights. But then like a country like Egypt is super dependent on the US. So it's a little bit of hypocrisy there.
Yeah, I'm like, what makes it a pride match if both of the countries are like, actually, we hate this and we don't want to be a part of it?
Yeah. And it's also, I think, like anything that's supposed to be global, you know, you can't impose your own worldview on. And I say this as someone who is part of the queer community, that I do think we in the West maybe sometimes have a bit of centrism, ethnocentrism. And I think you saw that with Qatar and when they hosted it, and they, you know, allowed a lot more things and people in. You know, one of their stipulations was they would, you know, allow alcohol and other things, even though it is a very conservative country. So there's an understanding that it needs to serve everyone, and you got to be accommodating to both Pride and to people who might be very religious and conservative.
I was thinking about Qatar recently because I was covering that as well from the science journalism angle. I remember people were very upset that the stadiums were being built with personal air conditioning. And I wrote a piece actually like looking into like how much energy does it actually take to run that. It turns out it's not necessarily more wasteful than how we have propane heaters outside of restaurants and things like that. It's just a different environment, and a lot of Western folks are maybe less familiar with that. I mean, it just got me thinking about general culture sharing and whether it's fair to be so critical of these two countries when clearly there are things in our own country that are in disarray. I don't know. What do you all think?
Are you saying that the U.S. is hypocritical in how it engages with the world? I am shocked at that.
I would never say such a thing. The U.S. is perfect,
yes,
clearly.
I think that's definitely a fair thing of like, there are certainly very concerning and like what I would say pretty restrictive and regressive steps that are being taken right within our own neighborhood. But I also think like even as Pride has its own many big conversations about what it is and what it has been, what it's growing into. I hope that Pride can be a celebration of people standing up for each other in their neighborhoods still, and then also seeing what the fight is next. And in this case, it might be with a World Cup match kind of looming over the top of it, and everyone getting to also bond over traffic being really bad at the same time.
Yeah, they're trying to pack in a lot that weekend.
What have you seen?
I mean, if it's on Pride weekend, there's always like hundreds of thousands that come in. And I generally think that like a lot of the coolest, most fun Pride things don't happen at the Pride Parade, but they happen, you know, at somewhere like Denny Blaine or like somewhere that's free, or there's a lot more radical self-expression. So
yeah, I'm really curious to see kind of what that intersection is, because in a way I could almost see it just being completely separate, right? Like, again, which brings up the question, like, what would make this even a Pride match then?
Well, I think there's so many different political aspects of the FIFA matches. There's so much money being put in, and so seeing, you know, that contracts are being fairly awarded equitably, and, you know, you have good labor practices. If FIFA can really like try to spread the wealth a bit and make sure local LGBTQ organizations, a lot of them are struggling right now, so making sure they get some funding would be important.
I did see that they were hosting a contest to give some money, I believe like $2,500 is the prize, to artists to design LGBTQ design for FIFA. I think they're doing the same thing for Black artists with Juneteenth. $2,500, I mean, I guess is better than nothing, but it seems like they definitely are making some kind of effort. But the question is, you know, what will it ultimately look like? Well, let's leave it there for now and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the latest in county and city politics. The holidays are coming up. Maybe you've got family coming to town and you want to show them a good time. Or maybe you have a few days off and you want to treat yourself to a little staycation. One of my favorite things is to hop on the ferry and head over to Bainbridge Island. I always feel like I'm in a movie when I'm on the ferry, like whether they're the dramatic views of the Seattle skyline or just moody fog. And once you're on Bainbridge, there's a lot to do. Their downtown is super close to the ferry terminal, and you can just go right over and do your holiday shopping. Like, there's this amazing antique store where I once got these Japanese woodcut coasters that I get compliments on all the time. You could also check out the Bainbridge Bakery Trail. There are 10 bakeries and cafes with vegan and gluten-free options, all within walking distance of the ferry, and another 6 if you've got wheels. Go to visitbainbridgeisland.org and check out the Bakery Trail under Things to Do. Or follow Visit Bainbridge on Instagram at Visit Bainbridge Island WA. It's apple season here in Washington, and there's no better time to go check out Seattle Cider Company, which uses fresh-pressed Washington apples, never from concentrate, in their ciders. They're a local gem based in SoDo who have been making craft cider since 2013. Bring the whole family and go visit their all-ages tap room, which features rotating small batch and limited release ciders. They've currently got a vivid light cider line with new flavors like tart apple, juicy pear, bright cherry, fresh peach, wild blueberry, and ripe plum. You can also pick up a 6 or 12 pack to go. Personally, I'm going to pick up some cans of the bright cherry to take to my next board game night with friends. Find Seattle Cider on the web at seattlecidercompany.com to check out the cider lineup and view upcoming taproom events. You can also use their cider finder to find local bars, restaurants, and grocery stores that sell Seattle cider. Just as we've recovered from the November election, we're heading right back into the ring with some of the first candidates for the 2026 midterms. So when County Executive Gurmai Zahalai was elected, he left a position on the King County Council open. And this week, Rhonda Lewis was appointed as an interim member. So Lewis was previously city administrator of Tukwila, as well as chief of operations for our last county executive, Dow Constantine. So this is the first time council has been majority women, and also Lewis was the first Black woman to serve on the council, which is exciting. Is this progress?
I think so, yeah. Representation isn't everything, but it's important that these spaces reflect us, like the whole community, and it is good that someone competent and qualified was appointed.
I know everyone's waiting for me to say what I think good progress is in this conversation. But no, I echo everything you said, Guy, that it's someone that has the expertise. It makes sense. It's a good way to kind of indicate values, but then also the work will come next too, and how they serve people will come next too.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see what she'll do on council, and I'm definitely choosing to be optimistic about it. Firsts are still important, even if they're not everything. So Lewis is serving as an interim member. There will be an actual election in November of 2026 to fill that vacant spot. One candidate has officially announced her candidacy, Washington State Senator Rebecca Saldana, and Port Commissioner Toshiko Hasegawa has said that she's strongly considering running as well. You guys, I feel like we just got done with the November election. Are you all feeling ready for the next round? Or are there any races that you're excited about?
No, we need less elections.
Let us rest.
The elections will continue until morale improves, i.e. they will continue indefinitely because there are always morale challenges. I think it's good to have people having a chance to weigh in on these types of things, but it is very interesting how big it can feel to immediately have another election around the corner and have to like rally everyone again and be kind of tuned in. But that's democracy. You got to be tapped in where you can as much as you can.
I guess the one thing I am excited about is getting a refill of my democracy vouchers.
There you go.
Which I always enjoy using.
Well, it's worth noting that these are not going to be democracy voucher elections because it is on the King County Council, but it is going to be the first year that King County Council elections are going to be on even years. So hopefully a lot more people are paying attention. And maybe that is why they announced so early, is to just do as much fundraising as possible. Rebecca Saldana is sort of a heavyweight in the progressive circles of Seattle, having been at the legislature for a long time. And I think Toshika Hasagawa is also, she's like a rising star. So it'll be interesting to see potentially two progressive women of color in Seattle politics compete for this important seat. King County Council pays a lot more than state legislature or the Port Commission, so I'm not surprised that they both would be interested in this position.
We'll have many months to see how this unfolds. In other news, our council just voted to approve 2 ordinances extending collective bargaining agreements with police unions. So the first was with the Seattle Police Management Association, which passed unanimously. So SPMA represents police captains and lieutenants, whereas SPOG, the Seattle Police Officers Guild, which I think folks maybe will be more familiar with, you've probably heard the term SPOG, represents officers and sergeants. And that agreement was a little bit more contentious. So ahead of the vote, Councilmember Rob Saka published an op-ed in The Stranger announcing that he was going to vote against it because it didn't include enough measures to increase police accountability. So in particular, he took issue with the contract's lack of subpoena power for the Office of Police Accountability and the Office of Inspector General if they needed officers' texts or records from third parties like banks or social media companies as part of a misconduct investigation. The current contract would not require that. Curious what you all think of this strategy. I thought it was interesting that Saka published this op-ed ahead of the vote.
It obviously didn't have a huge impact on the vote. It obviously ended up being a split, but then ended up being kind of that this got approved. And so it might have been trying to set the stage for what the priority is post this when Katie Wilson comes in and there's many existing challenges that are to be faced there. The only other thing I would say is that we got to come up with a better acronym than SPOG. It sounds like some sort of seasonal illness where you're hacking up a SPOG. Like, we got to figure something else out there. If we're going to continue to have these conversations, we need something new. SPOG is out.
Are you trying to give marketing advice to Mike Salon?
Oh, no. I'm saying collectively, all of us, we need to find something a little more punchy. SPOG is too cold. It's too clinical. We need to do something new.
Guy, I'm curious to hear what you think of Saka's strategy.
Well, I think Saka was very interesting. You know, it's telling to put the op-ed in The Stranger. It's certainly signaling that he's wanting to move in a little bit of a more progressive direction. You know, when he got elected, he did say a lot of things about equity, but then in office, he has been very much critical of like defund police and pivoted a little to the right, and now maybe he's swinging back. But yeah, I think the thing that's interesting to me is that what he's saying, his criticisms, basically everyone on the council agrees or knows of that, but most of them are not willing to stand on the record about the issues with this contract. And maybe it's because it's politically convenient. And even Dan Strauss, you know, another council member who voted in favor, admitted that the accountability measures that have been passed in 2017, there was an ordinance that was passed to implement new accountability measures, and that has not been implemented fully due to the collective bargaining agreement with SPOG. So it is interesting that Seattle politicians will know what the issue is, but then still not act on it.
Yeah, I saw that Strauss was like, essentially, we needed to pass this to be able to have more leverage to actually change things, which I found a little confusing.
Well,
yeah.
It seems like the argument is in the op-ed that it has to be that state legislators step in and change the law so that this isn't part of contract negotiations, because it feels like that's where they're identifying that they weren't able to get what they needed. No idea if there's the legislative political will for something like that to happen, because I can already see in my head the like attack ads of like, you're preventing us from bargaining over these types of things. But that seems to be what they're pushing towards, which is this has to be on a bigger level, something that gets a more kind of long-term and also like independent from contract negotiation fix in the future.
Yeah, it seems like a difficult issue to solve here. But Ultimately, like you said, Chase, it passed 6-3. Eddie Lynn, Rob Saka, and Alexis Mercedes Rink were the three that voted against. The contract also gives officers a starting salary of $120,000 with possibilities for increases starting at 6 months. I thought it was interesting. So Crystal Fincher's Hacks and Wonks interview with District 3 Council member Joy Hollingsworth from a while ago, she had previously said that she would oppose any new contract that didn't include subpoena power. I guess I'm curious, like, what causes politicians to kind of waffle on that?
I think the first thing is the police union has a lot of power and a lot of bargaining power, as well as influence with, Chamber of Commerce and other lobby groups. So, I think even Rob Saka's discussion that, the state legislature needs to step in reflects that the city doesn't have that much bargaining power. They don't have like an alternative for a lot of these services other than the police. And that's a huge struggle for anyone who's looking for police accountability. And then the other thing, I think it's very interesting, the timing of like, this came right at the end of Harrell's term instead of being negotiated by Katie Wilson, the new mayor. There's a question, what were they thinking, each party, were they thinking they'd get a better deal under Harrell than under Wilson? It is a little bit, I don't know if suspicious is the right word, but it is questionable, the timing, and maybe asking some of these council members, why rush this process?
Well, didn't we also just exit the consent decree? Like, what does that mean for police accountability?
Yeah, I mean, the consent decree was an agreement with the Department of Justice that basically binded the city to report on their accountability efforts, as well as issues like police use of force and racial disproportionality. The judge determined that Seattle Police Department made progress. I think others in the community would maybe question that. But at a certain point, I think people from all sides of the debate kind of saw that this federal interference might actually be a vulnerability, especially under Trump. Like, even if you are a police reformer or like an abolitionist, you might not actually like the consent decree.
Things get more complicated depending on, who is overseeing that, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so in response to the contract being signed, Spog posted this on X, formerly known as Twitter. I just dropped a link to it in the chat here. I want you all to take a look and tell me what you think.
That's so ominous. It's loading. Oh no.
Corny AI.
Oh boy.
Okay, someone describe to me what you are seeing.
We have Mike Solon in this like Superman suit or something.
It's like a superhero looking suit.
With like Seattle in the background, like a fake Seattle skylight.
Why?
And it says, Seattle City Council ratifies the SPOG contract, moderates 1, socialist 0, public safety for the win. They're really fans of subtlety there.
I thought that was an interesting response to having the contract ratified. What do you think this means about SPOG's relationship to the public right now also?
That certainly indicates a more adversarial. That's less Superman and that's more Homelander looking to me, if anyone understands that reference.
No, explain it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so there's this show called The Boys, where there is sort of a mirror image version of the classic superhero stories we know. Oh. And Homelander is the Superman that's actually the antagonist. And that was immediately what came to mind when I saw that, especially because it's like, oh, I guess the public is kind of the enemy because it's the socialists are the people in this case, or many of the people. Like normally politicians or people in these positions say, I'm here to serve everyone. This is turning it into we won, you lost as a type of framing, even beyond the cringy AI looking photo, because the hands just look so fake. They look like a JPEG that's been put on it. There's that part of it too that's a little unnerving.
Yeah, I mean, I think it epitomizes, their mentality of like going to war and policing, like kind of almost being more of military occupiers. It's worth noting, 80% of Seattle police officers don't live in the city. They're incredibly MAGA leaning, pro-Trump. Mike Salon is trying to be a conservative influencer and launch a career in Republican politics in the coming years, once he's done being powerful here. I think this pugnacious style is very typical of MAGA in 2025. And it really does put to shame, all these more moderate Democratic politicians who voted this through and, basically gave SPAG a W. It makes them look silly.
Well, I will say that AI Mike Salon has some incredible abs underneath that very uncomfortable looking Homelander suit, as you might have said, Chase. And I hate to leave this image as the last thing before we take a break, but let's take that break. And when we come back, we'll talk about arts in the city. The holidays are coming up, and if you're looking for something festive to do, check out the Argosy Cruises Christmas Ship Festival. You'll sail aboard the Spirit of Seattle with hundreds of twinkly lights as she visits 40 waterfront communities across Puget Sound. On board, you'll be surrounded by festive fun. There are going to be live holiday choir performances, warm drinks, cozy indoor seating, gorgeous views, and even a visit from Santa. With departure locations in downtown Seattle, Kirkland, Renton, Ballard, Leschi, Edmonds, South Lake Union, and Tacoma, there's a sailing for everyone. And every ticket supports the season of giving, with a portion of proceeds donated to the Seattle Times Fund for those in need, helping several local charities. Make some new holiday memories and book your Christmas ship cruise at argosycruises.com. Randy Engstrom is co-lead of Mayor-elect Katie Wilson's transition team on arts, culture, and the creative economy. And Shannon Chang recently interviewed him for a piece on the future of Seattle's creative economy. According to that piece, Seattle's creative workforce drives 18% of the city's GDP, which is 4 times the national average. And that creative economy is projected to grow 10% by 2028, representing 250,000 jobs across film, music, gaming, design, and related fields. Yet, a 2019 city report found that Seattle has both the highest paying creative tech jobs in the country and also some of the worst wages for individual artists and performers. In an analysis Engstrom worked on for King County, the creative economy accounted for $106 billion in GDP. $96 billion of that came from creative tech. So video games, Amazon Prime, multimedia startups. And he said he sees an opportunity to create more of a connection between the well-funded tech sector and struggling nonprofit arts organizations and individual artists. Okay, with all of that in mind, what does this tell us about who is considered an artist and what kinds of art are valued? I mean, Chase, as an arts critic, I'm particularly curious to hear from you and what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, the thing that was coming to mind, because the reporting I've done over the last year has primarily been about that first kind of list that you did, which is film. And not to go back into the previous conversation we were having, but to me, film can also illuminate history of the city, of the country. I'm thinking there's this film WTO 99 that's playing at Northwest Film Forum this weekend for a couple more times. And it's a incredible archival documentary about those protests, about what they represented about the city, how policing changed, how protesting changed, how the country changed. And having a place to see that, like the Northwest Film Forum, having resources to bring people together, that turns art into something that is communal as well and can also be very relevant. I want to be clear. I don't think art is only valuable if it directly comments on present things. I think it can move us. I think it can inspire us. I think it can challenge us. I think it can do any number of things. But I think that investment in those communal spaces is what allows art to be made and shared and taken part in collectively. In a world where we're so kind of separated out, we have to preserve those spaces in order to bring us together around art. That's what makes art valuable to me in many regards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Jane, what you mentioned, the art and the creative economy is incredibly dynamic, a big driver of the Seattle region. And also, there are huge class divides. Someone who's a video game developer might be making many times more than a painter or someone just trying to get by selling crafts at pop-up markets. And I think there is a lot that the city could look at, the county and the state, in terms of what policy changes to increase funding for folks who are struggling. The other thing is can we have these corporations contribute more to maybe pledge to hire a certain number of local artists on their projects? I know there's a tax in the state that the state is considering to do similar to Jumpstart, like a payroll tax on big corporations.
Right.
Maybe that could go to art. The other thing I wanted to flag is there has been some progress. Randy actually worked on the Open Doors levy, which is the King County sales tax that puts in well over $100 million every year into arts. And I think that is already having a big effect. It's about to be now 2 years since that was implemented. So I'd be curious to ask him, how that's shaped the economy as well.
I'm curious what other approaches we've seen and what else might work to try and make sure that artists have the funds and the spaces that they need to keep doing their work. Guy, I know you had been covering the developments with El Rey and common area maintenance. How has that worked? Is that an approach that other places could take to try and create more spaces?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. That is a very exciting development. So for folks who don't know, common area maintenance is like a local gallery, creative space. And next door to them is this building called the El Rey. And it used to be psychiatric in-resident housing, but for a variety of reasons, that building is no longer suitable because it's city-owned. They had to get permission.
It was kind of in disarray for a while,
Yeah,
right?
It was on fire watch and potentially going to get demolished. But this community group and a lot of other artists came together and launched this campaign saying, what could we reimagine this space to be? And so they're going to have some affordable housing, residence spaces for visiting artists, as well as some other cool community spaces and storefronts. So it is a really cool use to see it be returned back to the community. And they just acquired their property a couple weeks ago. They paid a symbolic $20, and now they have to raise $4 million to redevelop the property. It sounds like they're pretty confident that they can make that happen.
Nice.
And I think something exciting is that Katie Wilson was a big backer of that. And it'll be interested to see if, we might have more collaborations in the coming years, between different agencies like the city, the social housing developer maybe might be able to pitch in to really create more mixed housing and art spaces.
Mm-hmm. Chase, based on your reporting, what are some things that you feel might work? One of the things Engstrom mentions in this interview is his 1 year priorities, his 90-day priorities, 6-month priorities. What would you implement first if you had the power based on what you've seen?
Based on what I've seen and some of the reporting I've done, I'd probably say Harbor Island Studios for some of the stuff I cover, which I had talked about previously on this podcast, is a big one because it provides that type of communal support and people making their way into making film and television and that big part of the creative economy. It's something I'm still very much paying attention to into 2026. But if there was a way to preserve that, based on everyone I've talked to, that would be a pretty critical step towards building more to support local artists. It's not just people that already have access to this or people who've already done this work. It's the next generation. It's the people that have their own art to make and their own stories to tell that you want to see finding their way in to where there can be that supportive resources to share expertise, to share knowledge, to lift people up. Because I got to be honest with you, if it was only the same 5 rich artists making art would get pretty boring. I want to see more art from lots of different voices and people trying new things.
Yeah, it's a cornerstone of the scene to just kind of build it out and have it be a healthy ecosystem instead of the same 5 guys. The same 5 guys or AI. Which is that's the other thing that when I see this connection between creative communities and tech, I do see a possibility there in terms of, putting dollars towards more creative efforts. But I also think about how a lot of these companies are really investing in AI, which feels like a direct kind of FU to a lot of artists, making it easier for people to just generate things instead of a real person creating them. And I'm curious what you all think about that connection.
Yeah. I think I'm going to pull a Liam and get on my soapbox and say AI, especially generative AI, is the death of art. It is taking away the process of working at something, developing a craft, developing a skill, learning how it is that you want to express that. That's art. If you turn it into a prompt, it's not art, it's code. And I think it has no soul. And so I would say it's almost a ideological opposite. I listened to Ethan Hawke talk about how he loves to do theater because AI can never do theater. You go there and it's a person, and it's people bearing their soul, and like a collaboration between production designers and directors and all these things. That's what makes art fulfilling to me. And while I understand where some people who defend AI will say, well, now this is a way for me to have access to that. What if we had it be that you had access to making actual art instead of AI generated slop that feels just recycled from everything else? So I would say less AI investment, more investment in people-made art. What
I'm hearing is that Spog should have hired a real artist to have drawn that image of Mike Salon.
I feel like there would be an opportunity to do many parody arts of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree. And I also am thinking a lot about the material side of things. Microsoft, Amazon, and Google have been spending more than $100 billion every year to develop new data centers. That's just an extremely astounding number. It's hard to imagine. And the real question is, why are they not paying artists and people for the training data? They have to compensate folks for their work. Maybe that would help, struggling artists in the city. I really love that you mentioned Harbor Island Studio, and I think seeing the government get involved is important to create spaces. I think we need to get out of our neoliberal mentality that the government can't intervene in the economy. And it also helps people who are renting commercial spaces because you have alternatives that are city owned. So then landlords can't shortchange artists as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Put that money towards what we want to see more of. It feels like a tall order to try and figure out how to drum up those funds and distribute them accordingly. But please give artists money instead of AI. Well, that's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. I'm your host, Jane Sihu. Guy Oron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And Chase Hutchinson, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right, listeners, we want to hear from you too. Send us your news tips, your questions, your hot goss, or your thoughts about art in Seattle by sending an email to seattle@citycast.fm. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast Arts Hotline at 206-880-3931. Remember that you can always get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. And if you're enjoying the podcast, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode, and leave us a nice little review, please. Until tomorrow, see ya, Seattle.